Hey, it's Brandon Laws, host of Transform Your Workplace. This podcast is one that helps leaders build teams where people can do great work and feel great doing it. Each week, we explore ideas that make organizations more human, effective, and sustainable. Today's episode is sponsored by Xenium HR. And if you're tired of trying to do it all in-house, Xenium's custom HR solution gives you the flexibility to scale your people strategy. You'll get a dedicated HR business partner backed by specialists who can help with compliance, leadership training, compensation, and culture. Everything you need to strengthen your workplace. Now on to today's episode. I talk with Danielle Dinkelman, a corporate wellness expert who's helping organizations rethink how they approach employee well-being. We dig into what burnout really looks like, the 5 key ingredients that help people thrive, and how leaders can make wellness part of everyday culture, not a one-and-done type perk or program. This conversation is a powerful reminder that when people have the space to rest, recharge, and connect with purpose, everyone wins. All right, here's my conversation with Danielle Dinkelman. Enjoy. Danielle, it is such a pleasure to have you on Transform Your Workplace. Thanks for coming on the show.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Well, we've been trying to do this for a while. The summer is pretty much behind us, and I love talking about wellness. I've done several episodes in the past on wellness, and everybody's got a slightly different take. And I know you've been in corporate wellness for a while. Everybody who gets into corporate wellness usually has some sort of story or background as to why they got into it, and it could be a personal story. I'm really curious what your story is, why you got into this work, and how you think about it in your daily life.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you. I think wellness is one of those things that can have many meanings to many different people. But yeah, there usually is a story. I think for me, the story was kind of an overlap of a personal health journey that I was on due to a major car accident that I got into in college and put me into a position where I was in chronic pain. And over time and lots of physical therapy and different chiropractors and massage therapists and all the things, started piecing together the truth that I just had to exercise. And I had never done that before. I was a band nerd in high school and college, and personal exercise routines had never been a thing that I'd actually used. I was not a student athlete ever. And now I'm a very active athletic person in my adult life, which is kind of a fun turnaround. So yeah, there was a major personal health journey for years that culminated in me being interested in health and wellness coaching. The corporate wellness layer really came from watching my husband go through his corporate experience. I was a stay-at-home parent for many years and supported him in an executive corporate career, and he burned out 4 times in 12 years. And it was maddening, but also I found it personally very fascinating. I've always been fascinated by human behavior and human psychology. And, here's this living experiment in front of me whom I know very well. And watching him go through that experience was tough, but also very inspiring of seeing, okay, what could make a difference for him? What could have made a difference for him? And really, it's kind of those two pieces together that was the impetus for this corporate wellness adventure.
I'm curious, if you don't mind, going a little deeper on on observing your husband's burnout. What did that look like for him? You were clearly seeing it happen in your own household. It looks different for everybody, I think, but what did you notice about it?
Yeah. I think with him, it was just sheer exhaustion, and it came from being on 24/7, quite literally 24/7. He was in an industry where they were working with folks overseas in China. And so it was a 24-hour business day, and it took a toll. I think those signs that you see are, a lot of surviving behaviors where they're just not mentally, emotionally available when they are home. And yeah, there's so much, man, that could be a whole podcast in and of itself, right? I think by this time, many of us have experienced that of like, you're just trying to get through the day and you go to sleep and you do it again. And it's a tough cycle to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you have really good perspective because I mean, you dealt with the car accident, your own personal health journey, and then seeing the burnout side of the wellness and just our health. We take it for granted all the time. And, you know, I've heard of people burning out. I've heard of people having chronic health problems, and until I experienced it myself, like I had a back issue that was debilitating for me for probably over a year until I ended up having surgery, and I didn't really have quite the like compassion or empathy yet for people who experienced that until I went through it myself. And I mean, I remember being in meetings where I'm sitting and I had like sciatic nerve pain just running down my leg, and I'm like, I'm miserable here. I can't even focus and work, and I would jump off immediately and go like lay down on the floor. And I can only imagine you probably felt something similar, maybe a little different, but just the fact that everybody's going through something, whether it's chronic pain, burnout, stress, and managing that or dealing with it at its root cause level is so vital. And I'm sure the work that you do is just fulfilling for you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it is. And it's so, like you're saying, it's so foundational, right? It's like we notoriously take our health and our well-being for granted until it's taken away from us in some form. And then all of a sudden it's the only thing that matters. It's the only thing you can pay attention to. Yeah, that's why we exist. It's like if we can help people address those things before it becomes a crisis, then that's a win-win across the board. That's a win for that individual, and that's a win for the team and the organization that they're a part of. Yeah, I'm pretty passionate about it.
So you got the coaching side of your business, and you started, I think it sounds like you started getting into the corporate side. Those are very different things, but the coaching side of it is fascinating because that means that people are proactively coming to you and wanting some help. And so they're taking responsibility for their own health and well-being, while the corporate side, employers are like, maybe like we're responsible for our people and their well-being, and so we're going to project a program on them. Like, how do you see wellness in terms of a responsibility?
It's funny that you kind of paint it that way because, yes, I was in private practice as a health and wellness coach for 3 or 4 years before we launched our corporate wellness company. And from the beginning, my view of it was that it shouldn't be any different. And in many ways, I disagree. And I see limitations with the way that corporate wellness has traditionally been approached. Actually, there's a great blog post on our website about kind of corporate wellness 2.0 of kind of following the evolution of that and why it became a thing, why it started. And it has evolved over time. And I think it still has yet to evolve further. But to your question of who's the responsible party, I think that these things work best when it's a shared responsibility. So yes, in the private sector, yeah, those are persons, private individuals that are saying, yep, I have a problem. I need help. I want to work with a wellness coach. On the corporate side, we have employers that are saying, I'm going to be very flippant and stereotypical here, but most of the time, employers are saying, how can we get these lazy people to work harder? And it's unfortunate that that is the mindset that a lot of employers come into, but they've had experiences that have shown them that that's true. I have kind of been able to choose the industries that we focus on. And so we see that less and less in the spaces that we are in. We tend to gravitate to organizations that do have more of a symbiotic relationship with their employees, more altruistic, more relationship-based, all of that. But we have to recognize that it is the individual's responsibility to take care of themselves. And it's the employer's responsibility, first of all, to do no harm. So we've got, that's like base level. Like if an organization is looking at the workload or the work setting or the emotional climate, the communication norms, is there respect? Is there decency? Is there safety, both physically and psychologically? Like all of those things, right, that we love to talk about in the HR space. If those things are in place, then, that's an employer that's being a good steward, in my opinion, of that employer relationship. And I think the crossover of the two I personally feel that an organization should be taking steps to put resources in front of and make access to for their people. And we see that, that's become a norm with EAPs. That's become a norm, of course, with health insurance. That's just like almost always been the way it's been. And that's continuing to evolve. And that's kind of where like our services come in of, well, EAP is really good at this thing. Health insurance, health plans are really good at this thing. And there's still a gap here. And that's kind of what our wellness coaching fills. So yeah, but it does kind of start with that. Does the employer believe that it's any of their responsibility to sponsor a program like this? And I will say that there are options, right? There are so many things that you can make available to your team and not necessarily have to pay for it. So if it's ever a budget issue, like there are so many options out there, and we have a whole spectrum of those as well.
I do like what you're saying about like, I mean, you started with the cynical version of the corporate wellness, which is like maximize productivity. But if we actually flip that a little bit and take like almost like a coach's approach to this, the whole reason we, coaches, they try to unlock the best version or this other level that an individual has, especially if they want it. And I think if as employers, we put the human first and said, we think it's the right thing to do, because there's something more that you can achieve as an individual and we can collectively as a team. And then the results are a byproduct of all of that. But that can't be the why.
Yeah, those are my favorite people to talk to, that's where they're coming from, that it is from this place of optimizing. And like you said, I love how you said that, of like unlocking potential. And yes, is that going to translate to performance? Is that going to translate to productivity? Absolutely. But, it's an order of operation. It's why are you doing it? And we're going to get into this, I know, a little further today. But, I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls of traditional corporate wellness is that, everyone has a BS radar, especially your employees. So if you are bringing something in as something for you as the employer, something that you're motivated to have them use because you're trying to bring your health costs down or whatever, they're going to sniff that out, and that's where all the incentives come in. And I'm actually very proud to say that none of our current programs with any of our current clients use incentives. That is not what this program is. Ours is, it's a little progressive. It's a little more high level. And it's assuming that you have very brilliant people that do want to grow and evolve themselves. And isn't it awesome that you can be a part of that just by making this resource available?
When you work with employers, the ones that you like to talk to and they see the world the way that you do, well, how do they communicate to their employees? Like if they roll out some sort of program, and we'll get into the nuts and bolts of it here in a little bit, but how are they communicating the why behind it so that they don't have the BS radar that you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it starts really with leadership in its truest sense. And it's very hard for our program to come into a company that has a toxic culture or that has demeaning leadership styles. Like those things can't exist. They can't coexist with our program. So it always comes like it's a natural outgrowth of what's already been happening inside of the organization. All we're doing is making this tool available where managers and supervisors were having to be the life coach, the personal confidant of their team members, which is inappropriate, first of all, and ineffective because there's power dynamics at play, right? Did I answer your question?
I mean, I was really trying to get to how are leaders, employers communicating, like why getting behind a program and why even to participate? What's in it for them? Why do we want to do this?
Yeah. Okay. So let me speak to that a little more clearly. So first of all, they get a lot of coaching from us of this is how we recommend you talk about this and you introduce this, and we do a lot of that for them. We do a lot of that with them. And the message is, we care about you as a whole human being. And we know that if you are able to take really good care of yourself at home, you will also be able to take better care of your clients, your teammates, your direct reports, and so on. So we lead with this message of kind of that symbiotic relationship that can be between employer and employee of like, hey, this is good for everyone. But yeah, the overall message is we care about you as a whole human. We see you as a whole human. Now we would like to support you as a whole human. Here's this.
You talked earlier about that blog post, would you say Wellness Program 2.0? I'm curious, like compared to the other programs that other consultants companies might put out there, what do you see as like the core pillars of your wellness program that makes it special?
Our program is designed for high impact, not for lip service. All right. And so the people that use it, we've been tracking, we've been doing self-reported surveys for the last 3.5 years that we've been in business. And we ask people to tell us about three things. How has this wellness coaching impacted your stress levels? How has it impacted your focus and productivity at work? And how has it impacted your personal healthy habits? And the data, we actually just did kind of a cumulative data study on this. And we see on average, people that use our coaching, we're looking at, let me see if I can remember these and get these right. It's 66% improvement in healthy habits, 22% improvement in focus and productivity, and 30% improvement in stress levels. So it's incredibly high impact. Like we are really moving the needle for the people that use this. I will also say that the utilization, the adoption rate that we get it's just blowing other programs out of the water. We're anywhere from 20 to 40% utilization in groups of, 25 to 200 employees, which is kind of our focus. In our micro teams that we serve under 25 employees, we're like 80 to 100% utilization. These are high performing teams that are motivated to invest in themselves. And yes, they may not be paying for the program, but they have to show up to those calls and they have to do the work and they're setting goals and they're being held accountable. And it's really cool to see. There's this chunk of the population that wants to figure it out. What does it take for me to be healthy and happy at home and at work? And that's really what we're there to help with.
I'm curious what the core components to your wellness program is. Like when you go in, doesn't matter size of organization, but I'm curious, like what are those core components? And this is sort of tongue in cheek a little bit, but you're probably not doing like gym discounts and meditation apps and like the lipstick on a pig type stuff here. That really doesn't move in my opinion, doesn't move the needle because you don't even know if those people use
it
them.
Doesn't move the needle. And as you're saying with lipstick on a pig, it's like, why are we doing this? Are we trying to cover up the fact that, working here sucks? So let's give you some more perks to help you feel a little better about it. So the nuts and bolts of our program can actually be very complementary, incredibly complementary and amplifying of any and everything else that is being offered. So we actually love working with teams that have the gym memberships and they have the EAP and they have all of these awesome resources.
Tools, yeah.
Yeah, because then that's what our coaches are there to do, is to empower and activate people to use what they have available to them and to take action. That's the biggest thing that we do, is just help people get unstuck. The core elements of our program is making one-on-one coaching available to any and all staff that want to engage in that kind of personal development. So that usually looks like a monthly phone or Zoom call with one of our wellness coaches, and they get to set their own areas of focus, and they are working on habit goals of any kind. We start with a tool called the Wellness Wheel. I'd actually be happy to share that link with you too today, so listeners can go fill that out themselves and check in with themselves. But there's 6 dimensions of wellness that covers. It's not just diet and exercise, right? It can be, how's your well-being in kind of a spiritual standpoint, in a financial standpoint, in your occupational and intellectual standpoint. I think social is in there too. And then, yes, we have the physical. So if we're helping people look at that big picture, they can feel better, right? And be more productive, and everybody wins. Really, the core of our program is just making that one-on-one coaching available. We do other things. We do a lot of mostly leadership trainings, because again, if we can have the leadership building the culture, setting the tone, then we will see utilization of our services go up, and then we see the impact of it go up. Yeah, we have a number of other ancillary things, but the core is let's get people figuring out what this is for them individually. which you're not going to get with any other program.
We talked about burnout a little bit earlier, and I know it's prevalent in a lot of organizations. At least employees are starting to talk more about it, and I think leaders are starting to pay attention. When we first connected months ago, you shared like 5 preventative measures that leaders could use inside their organization to help their people avoid burnout. You mind sharing some of those ideas with listeners?
Yeah, for sure. So it's something that leaders should definitely keep in mind, first and foremost for themselves. And then when you look at how you are engaging with your employees and how you're setting up this workplace and these work expectations, does it allow room for these things? Because that is what I saw just like suck the life out of my husband in his burnout experience. Was there was no space. There was just no space for him to take care of himself as a human being. And it was a huge problem. So yes, the 5 things, number 1 is rest. The second one is fuel and the quality of that fuel. So, I mean, nutrition. What are we putting in our bodies from a nutritional standpoint? Right. The third one is play, which is one of my personal favorites. Fourth one is connection. And the fifth one is purpose. And again, like this could be like, I could do multiple workshops on all of this stuff because there's so much depth there of what does that look like in your life? What does that look like in my life? What does that look like in our organization? Do we create space and expectation and culture around rest? I think a lot of companies do a great job doing that around purpose, doing that around connection and play even. But rest is a tough one because we think rest and work are in conflict with each other, but they actually help each other. If we rest, our work will be better.
Do you think employers undervalue rest, or do you think they just don't know how to implement it inside their organization because they are in conflict, as you mentioned?
It depends on the leader. I think mainstream traditional leadership fears rest. I think they're scared of it. I think they're scared of people taking vacation. They're scared of people taking their PTO. I give a training called the 3 Pillars of a Wellness Culture, which is more than just like what our program does. Like this is what you all are doing as an organization. And there's permission, there's policy, and then there's programs. So we really fit into that program piece. But if you could take those 5 things we just listed, again, rest, fuel, play, connection, and purpose. What if you sat down with your employee handbook and asked yourself, where is the rest lens being reflected?
All right. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So you could go down the list with all of those. Maybe you would change your PTO policy a little bit. Maybe you would change, this may or may not be in the handbook, but maybe you're looking at your break room and seeing what kind of fuel is available to your team. So little things we can do there, right? I think generally people fear some of these things, especially rest, that it's a distraction, right? And that if we just work 100% of the time and giving our all, then that's going to be high performance. But what that is unsustainable performance. So aren't we more interested in sustainability? And are we more interested in quality or quantity? Right. So it kind of depends on what industry you're in. So the niche we focus on is folks that are in kind of client and professional services where they're delivering high value products and services that they've got to deliver well. And they're competing with others that do very well. So they need to be exceptional. So how do you do that? Well, you've got to look at how sustainable the work is that your people are doing. And if you have optimized humans in your team that show up and they're energized and they're motivated and they're excited, they're collaborative, they're creative, like that doesn't happen unless they have those 5 things we talked about.
Yeah, those are so important. I totally see the rest side. I even see it individually in myself sometimes. I'm like, sometimes it's hard for me to sit still. I'm like, I could be using this time for, whether it's household chores or work or something like that. And it's hard to get out of that because I'm like, time could be used doing something productive. And I know in our businesses, we think that same way. Getting out of that rut is tough.
Well, I just want to call you on that. We're going to do a little mini coaching session right here, Brandon. One of the biggest mindset shifts that we all need to make is that rest is productive. You just said, I could take time to rest or I could go do something productive.
Good call out.
Okay. So that is a fallacy that we've all been culturally conditioned to believe. especially people of kind of mid-career millennial age. And that's what we're seeing Gen Z really revolt against. And they should. Yeah, we've got to reset that. Rest is productive. You could say that to every single one of those 5 items we talked about. Nourishing yourself with good, healthy fuel is productive. Playing from time to time regularly is productive. Connecting as humans is productive. And then, really being in tune and in touch with your purpose, also productive.
So you work with small, mid-sized businesses. I'm sure you work with like larger organizations too, but I'm thinking about the small business organizations because budgets are tough. What are some like low cost, high impact things that HR and leaders can do immediately regarding wellness to shift towards that culture of well-being that we're talking about without like needing a giant budget for it?
Yeah, great question. And especially these days, I think everyone is asking the question of how can we spend less? How can we steady the ship during times of incredible uncertainty right now? Yeah, it's amazing. It really doesn't take a lot of money. And in some cases, it can take $0 to make a positive change and a positive impact with this. So to me, it all comes back to culture. So first, there has to be a consensus among leadership. So what I run into a lot is I will meet someone that is a VP, or maybe they're a director, or especially when it's an HR leader, they are the bleeding heart of the leadership team. They're clued into this. They're hearing all of these things about culture and well-being, and they're like, yeah, I want this to be true in our company. But they turn around and they look at their CEO, they look at their executive leadership team, and they're like, yeah, this isn't going to fly. Like they're not going to hear me. And it's sad and unfortunate when that is the case. But I think when we're lucky enough to be on leadership teams that have more open-minded, slightly more, I will say, mature and progressive values around that symbiotic relationship between employee and employer, we can start to have some discussions. So it's really hard to save the people that are on the far extremes. But if you find yourself kind of in the middle, that there's possibility and there's openness to improving culture around employee wellness, step one is having a discussion. So I give a talk on culture of well-being, and we've got a discussion guide. Again, happy to share that with you so that you can pass that along to listeners. And it's just a series of questions of, could you add that to the next shareholders meeting or the next leadership offsite? Just having some honest discussion around, what do we think? What do we believe? What do we see? Where are our strengths and where are our weaknesses as an organization? And starting to kind of develop this as just part of the leadership conversation is step one. And that is often the only thing it costs you is time and energy, and just making it a priority.
That's a good point.
And sometimes it does take kind of an internal champion to speak up and say, I heard this podcast or I read this study that like we would be, our turnover will go down, our productivity will go up, job satisfaction will go up. Like, Google it. The data is so compelling, but sometimes it just has to be talked about because it's not the day-to-day operations of a business. And yet it is so integral to it. It's kind of the invisible thread.
I'm sure you've run across leaders early on when you're starting to work with somebody, or maybe at the opportunity stage or something, but you probably heard leaders say something to the effect of like, we've offered wellness programs before. No one uses them. They don't work. But from your perspective, there's something got to be missing, right? Whether it's program design, he communicated it wrong, permission wasn't there, or culturally it wasn't ingrained in their day-to-day. So speak to that leader who says they don't work. They do. So what is it that's missing?
They do. Absolutely. So, again, is a wellness program coming out of the clear blue sky? Is it incongruent with the day-to-day norms and the day-to-day culture and the ethos in your company? That can be addressed very simply. I won't say easily, but very simply can be addressed if there's desire and leadership around it. Program design certainly can have a lot to do with it. And, we've talked with a variety of industries, and we've seen programs like ours not perform really well with, let's say, assembly line workers in a manufacturing plant. There's just something about the culture of just that workforce that doesn't see the value, doesn't feel the need to be working on themselves in this, self-actualizing sort of way. So it is really important for you to know your people, know your demographic, know their values and their beliefs. So looking at the type of work they're in, also looking at what's your generational spread. We talked a little bit about, the difference between Gen Z and Millennial and Gen X. And even if you still have some baby boomers hanging around, they all have different values and beliefs and language around wellness, right? So yes, program design and communication needs to take that into consideration. Number one pitfall of wellness programs is they are lip service programs that are being incentivized. They're not high impact programs that are being kind of rolled out as an extension of culture and values of the company, which is kind of where we like to help people try something different.
So let's flip this around. We've been talking about like at the employer level, how do we implement some of these things? But for maybe individual leaders or contributor level people who want more support for their own well-being, but they just don't have either the right resources or know what to do, maybe informational, how can we start this conversation at the individual level?
Yeah, it's a great question because, the story of the heart-centered HR leader that sees this and wants this, but they know that if they ask, it will just fall on deaf ears is a really tough situation. So every group is different. And I will say I love having these conversations and individualizing it. So if anybody finds themselves in that situation and just want to shoot me a message on LinkedIn, I will gladly, converse with you on this and explore options. But look for the opening, try to advocate, be curious. Often, if you can show that there is a groundswell of interest, maybe you're one person that wants more wellness resources, and that would feel tough to bring that to leadership. But could you, maybe not so far as passing around a petition and getting signatures, but can you build a little bit of a movement around this, a little bit of a grassroots of all of us in this department are really struggling with XYZ, something, we heard of this wellness coaching offering, or we heard of this specific training, or, we're really interested in this. We think it would help. If you can have, there's power in numbers, there's strength in numbers. So that's a tip I would offer. And then the last piece that comes to mind with this is lead by example. You don't have to have director or manager in your title to be a leader. If people respect you and listen to you and you have good ideas, you are a leader. So I will say, shameless plug, I don't know when this episode will air, but we are on track to actually launch a direct to consumer option of our coaching where private individuals can access our wellness coaching team to help themselves as working professionals figure out this work-life balance thing and this stress management thing. And the reason we're doing that is we want advocates like that to be able to access it, experience it, speak to it, and then they can come back to leadership and say, hey, I've been using this for the last 3 to 6 months, and this is how it's helped me. I can see where it will help my team. What do you guys think about bringing this in? Whether that's 100% paid by the company, or it's a 50-50 copay, or it's an opt-in, there's so many options. But the trick is just getting the right resources in the hands of the people that see the value and will use it and will get that impact.
Those are good tips. Love those. Well, let's end I want to end on a personal note. You are an entrepreneur. You run a business. You're a mother of 4. Somehow you find time for rock climbing. I don't know if you still do that regularly, but I'm curious with all of those things that you're juggling. And I know being a parent, especially a mother of 4 kids, that's a lot. How do you keep burnout at bay? And how do you model wellness for not only your children, husband, people around you?
Well, the pressure's on, right? To to model that when you say, I'm building a wellness company. Yeah. So first of all, I'll say, I'm always aware of it and I'm not perfect at it, right? So I am constantly a work in progress on that. And I've been actually very open to my LinkedIn community that I was going through burnout just a few months ago, and it surprised me and it angered me. And I was, ashamed and frustrated that happened. So, the way that we work on this means that sometimes we fail. And one of my favorite quotes is Nelson Mandela said that I never lose, I win or I learn. Yeah, if you scroll back on my LinkedIn, you'll see me kind of sharing in real time like my experience with burnout and what I tried to lean in and learn from it, and then integrate that learning each time that it happens. But yeah, I think finding time, yeah, between entrepreneurship and motherhood is the struggle is real for sure. I think one of the most helpful mindsets, again, for me is to recognize that when I'm taking time for myself to go rock climbing, which I actually was just in the climbing gym last night, I choose things that check multiple boxes. So, rock climbing, for example, to me, that's a mental health break. It's a mindfulness activity because you can't be thinking about anything else other than you on that wall, making sure you don't fall off and hurt yourself. So it's mindfulness. It's also physical exercise, and it's also very social. There's a great community element at the climbing gym that I really enjoy. And so I'm being extremely efficient with the little free time that I have, but I'm making time for it. And I'm practicing the same thing that I just taught you, which is when I go rock climbing, it is not taking away from my family. It's not taking away from my work. It's actually enhancing both of those things. And it's ensuring the sustainability of it because I'm over here finding joy. I'm playing, I'm moving. So seeing where it fits together in that sustainability model for yourself is a really helpful mindset shift for me.
Thank you for sharing that. This is such a fun discussion too. Really enjoyed you coming on. What do you want to plug? Anything that you can share with listeners?
Yeah, I mean, definitely hop on our newsletter. I've got it's called the Workplace Wellness Navigator that goes out every month. And if you want more info on our individual coaching options, definitely follow us on LinkedIn and hop on that newsletter, acwcoaching.com. Yeah, that's the main things. Like come and hang out with us in the newsletter or on LinkedIn. Even if you just like the idea of, yeah, if we took better care of ourselves as professionals, everything would get better. Like I'm a really big believer in like the evolution of the workplace and of work, that we have to get to a virtuous, like regenerative place with it and get away from this extractive depletion model. And I see the work that we do and the message we send and the things we talk about as very much in service of that. So yeah, just love people to join the thought community on that.
My guest today has been Danielle Dinkelman. Danielle, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode of Transform Your Workplace. The content on this show is strictly for general information and educational purposes only, so that you can go transform your workplace in a positive way. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the show are the guest's own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of either Xenium HR, the sponsor of the show, or me, the host, Brandon Laws. Additionally, Xenium HR or myself, Brandon Laws, doesn't endorse any guest, their business, or any organization they represent, so discretion is advised. We encourage you to work with a trusted advisor to find a custom approach that fits your organization's needs. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode.